This is chapter 2, part 3. Let's continue on with the graphs. Here we can take a moment to, I mentioned in the last segment that there was a term from these graphs that I wanted you to learn. And here you can see it's called dailies here. It's D-A-L-Y-S. And what that refers, they kind of referred to it before without using this term. What that means, they don't define it in these graphs, so I need to do that for you. What dailies means, it's the D is for disability, A is for adjusted, L is for life, YS is for years. So dailies is disabled, disability, adjusted, life, years. And what we mean by that is what the definition of that, and this you want to get this down because this could show up on your quiz, and it'll certainly come up later in the semester, is that it refers to how much healthy life has been lost due to drugs. Here we're talking about drugs. It could be other things too. It could be like from car accidents or from guns or something like that. I mean, many different things, but it's sort of like the loss of healthy life due to drugs in terms of years. So like one daily would be is if you lost 1 year of life due to drugs, or 1 year of a healthy life. So you're not necessarily dead, but you were like impaired. You had health problems. So dailies are referring to that, the loss of quality years due to drugs. That's what they mean when they say that. So over here in this y-axis, you can see, from 50,000 up to 500,000. That means like 500,000 would be 500,000 years that are lost, years of life, of quality, healthy life that's lost due to drugs. And in this case, they're focusing on not just like health problems, but actually dying, loss of life due to a person's life being shortened by drug use, drug overdose. So the focus here is on deaths. You can see, by the way, that it goes from, on the left-hand side, from 1990 all the way up to 2019, our newest data. And you can see that the number of deaths is going up over that time gradually. From 1990, you're looking about 200 and maybe 30,000 deaths and years of life. So loss of days, loss of years due to these deaths. You're looking at something like 240,000. But by the end of this time span up to 2019, it's reached close to 500,000. So it's doubled in loss of life. So what's that showing us? What's the big takeaway there? Is that things are getting worse when it comes to death overdoses around the world. Things have gradually, over this, roughly 30-year period, things have gotten worse. They've gone from lower to higher overall. Now, they've got these different colors in here, which let's see what they represent. And you can see that let's start with the biggest colors. The yellow here is the biggest chunk. That's the biggest loss of life. And that's indirect hepatitis C. So what do they mean by that? What they're saying is that people are using drugs with injecting drugs using needles. And using those needles, they're maybe using dirty needles. They're getting contaminated. They're passing this hepatitis C through their use of dirty needles. And that is the biggest chunk of loss of life around the world. It's indirect because the drugs themselves are not killing people. It's the hepatitis C, which you're getting from your drug use that involves needles. You can see that the second biggest one here, this dark blue, is the same kind of thing, but here we're talking about HIV. So HIV virus is being spread through the use of needles when you're using drugs, and that's killing people. Has killed people more and more from 1990 up until say around 2005, and then it's gradual, very gradual decrease since that time. So that's fortunate that it has come down, but it hasn't come down much. And so you can see if you add the yellow and the blue together that that's the biggest chunk of deaths around the world, loss of life, where drugs are involved, is actually dirty needles. And you can see if we look at the other colors quickly, you can see that the next biggest one is this sort of, powdery blue color, that is direct use of opioids. See, so opioids, if you're just talking directly killing people because of the effect of the drugs themselves, you can see that it's opioids is the biggest one by far, and that it's grown from 1990 up to 2019. The other ones, the other drugs here, if you're talking of this dark red color, violet red color, is all the other kind of drugs combined that are not specified. But you can see here you've got these different greens and white, and this dark color is cocaine. The darkest color is cocaine, and then you've got this lighter greenish color here, which is actually like hurting yourself, maybe committing suicide because of drug addiction. So that's, none of these are big in and of themselves, but they're all contributing something. You don't see too much of the gray cannabis use. Cannabis usually does not lead to some sort of overdose, so you wouldn't have much direct cannabis related deaths. And so you can just see these other things so again, the cocaine is a part of it, and the amphetamines, you've got that green color in there, so they're just all adding a small part to this whole thing. Big story: opioids for the drugs, dirty needles for the biggest chunk of it. That's the story there, and that the whole thing is growing over time. And of course, while the HIV related deaths have gone down a little bit, you can see that in the yellow, that the hepatitis C deaths have continued to expand. This has gotten taller and taller as we come up to closer to the present day. Okay, let's see. So here we have they have specifically the dailies, where it's put in terms of healthy life lost, right? In millions. This here would be 35 million healthy life years lost, as opposed to death. We're just talking about healthy years lost. But that's what they mean by daily. Once again, just to remind you about that, disability adjusted life years. So it's, you live fewer healthy years due to this drug abuse or drug misuse. Anyway, so if we're looking at this, you can see that the pattern is similar. Even if it's not killing you, you can see that it's no longer the biggest chunk, but as before, a big chunk of this problem is the hepatitis C, the dirty needles problem, and you see that with the HIV. Similar patterns there, but it's not the single biggest one. The single biggest one is the opioid now has become the single biggest one, this lighter blue color, and it's grown over time and has become the biggest, up to 2019 has become the biggest issue. So it's accounting for the largest loss of healthy years. So it's diminishing the health of the individuals who are abusing these drugs. So opioid, again, we're seeing globally, opioids major problem. So it's number one here, and it's added a lot. And you can see that with this loss of health, just like with deaths, it's gone up a lot over the past 30 years. And then you can see that we won't spend time on these other drugs, but the other drugs contribute less of the problem. You can see here that the other drugs, because you get new drugs all the time, different types of drugs, that's a little thicker, a little bit bigger than when when you're looking at the deaths. Same thing here, that all of these contribute a little something. You can see that the green amphetamine is a problem around the world. That's diminishing the health of of millions of people around the world. But it's all adding up. Again, we're going from about, what is that? I don't know, 17 million dailies up to over 30. So almost a doubling it's just a quantitative measurement of loss of health. Okay, now this one here is global and regional use of cannabis among teenagers, people ages 15 and 16, and also the 15 to 64, which is basically the entire population. So you could focus on just sort of these teenagers, or you could focus on the general population. That's what they're doing here. 2021 is the year we're looking at, and there's different regions of the country. So if we start with Oceania, which is Australia, New Zealand, and that part of the world, you can see that you've got about 12%, about 12% of the general population that uses cannabis, and probably about 17% of these teenagers in this region of the world that are using. So again, if you see something like that, you can say, okay, it's fairly common. It's not rare, but it's also not something that everybody's doing. It's just a certain segment of the population here. We're looking at, for general population, like 12% or so, a little more for teenagers. And you can see that area is one of the higher regions around the world. The Americas, of which we're a part, that would be, South, Central, and North America. You're looking at, for both age groups, around 10% of people using marijuana. And Africa, lower, for both ages. Europe, you can see low use for the general population, older people, but if you focus just on teenagers, you got more teenagers using. By the time they're grown-ups, that basically drops down quite a bit. So, from over 10% to like not even 6%, looks like. And then, as I noticed or made note of before, you tend to get low rates of use of different kinds of drugs in Eastern Asia. This is a little bit, with these big regions, it's a little bit misleading, because you actually see in Southeast Asia, we'll see here in a moment, we'll see that a lot of pretty heavy drugs get made in Southeast Asia. So East Asia, not as much, but so it's kind of a little bit misleading if you add up different small sub-regions into a real big region. Asia is obviously a big region, but still overall low usage there. And then here, when you add everybody together, you've got about 5%, 4% of grown-ups, 5% plus of teenagers using marijuana. So it gives you a sense. Not common, not something that everybody's doing, just a small little percentage of the population that is using. Here you can see, this is a graphic that drives home a good point, that if you've got one problem that you have is if you have drug dealing, drug marketing. This is true, all around the world. Here, the focus here is global. But if you have drug trafficking going on, whether it be international on a grand scale, or drug dealing locally, or on the corner block or something like that, there's a market there. There's drugs being made, being delivered, being sold, being purchased, from the wholesale all the way down to the retail on the street corner. There's a market. You can think of it as a market. It's buying and selling. But the problem is that when you've got these illegal markets, you got these drug traffickers, these drug cartels, these drug organizations, that it tends to have a negative effect on other things beyond just the economy. You can have a negative effect, and they just point some of the things that can lead to, that's one thing you see, where illegality can lead to other forms of corruption or negative outcomes. Illegal gold mining in some parts of the world, trafficking in wildlife, illegal deforestation, eliminating forests, breaking laws in how forests are used. Of course, we know that violence, murder, is a big part of drug trafficking, drug dealing. So that's a fallout, that's a consequence, a negative consequence of these illegal drug markets, and also illegal logging. So you just see these illegal economic activities that can kind of spin out. It's like the corruption spreads, right? The illegality, the corruption spreads, water pollution as well, which might profit somebody to get rid of waste, but then does damage to the environment, damage to the quality of the water by dumping, by pollution. So what's the story here is that corruption tends to bleed from one area into another area. And so that's a negative consequence of this illegal drug trafficking that we see going on all around the world. Okay, we're a little bit past 15 minutes. We'll go ahead and continue on in the next segment.